Good morning. My name is Kristen Mayer. I use female pronouns, and I was lucky to grow up here at Fountain Street Church. This morning, Reverend Christopher asked me to share some stories and some memories from when I was a kid here in the Christmas season as a way of the welcome this morning. I was delighted to do this. Most of my strongest memories of Christmas center around my 6th grade year. When I was growing up, 6th grade is when you got to do all the important stuff at Advent. It's when you got to light the candles. It's when you played the not angel or shepherd in the pageant. And one lucky 6th grader got to read the story from the pulpit on the 4th Sunday of Advent. So when I hit my 6th grade year, I was so excited to finally get to do all these important things. I distinctly remember working really hard on the reading, and I practiced it, and I worked out timing and emphasis, and I read it in front of a panel, and they thought I did such a lovely job, but there were many, many people that did a great job, and it was too close to call, so they randomly selected Libby Bodie. If you weren't here in the 80s and 90s, Libby Bodie is the youngest daughter of the Reverend Bruce Bodie, who was an associate minister here at the time. So Libby Bodie got to light the candle of love. I didn't get to light any candles. Libby Bodie was always randomly selected for everything. And the only thing I got was the consolation prize. Since I did such a good job at the audition, they gave me a very important role in the pageant. They gave me the essential role of the innkeeper. So instead of reading from the pulpit on the 4th Sunday of Advent, I spent most of the early Christmas Eve pageant service hiding behind the pulpit. I also distinctly remember that my mom told me Bruce Bodie shared with her after the pageant that I was the best innkeeper he had ever seen, and that he really thinks the innkeeper is the unsung the hero of the story, that it's the innkeeper who had so little but shared what he could that really is the point of the story. Even in 6th grade, I saw right through his ploy to distract me from his corrupt nepotism. I should say these truths are real and affirmed by me, the storyteller, and there's no point in doing any fact-checking. If you call Libby Bodie up, she'll probably say something like she doesn't remember reading the story, but that's just because Libby Bodie has a notoriously bad memory, and it's just evidence that she was randomly selected for so many things she lost track. I also want to say the more real, honest, deeper truth is that Libby Bodie is one of my dear closest friends to this day. In fact, most of my dear close friends are connections I made through this community. And even though we're spread out now across time zones and even into different countries, these are the people I know I can turn to in my grief, and I think more importantly for me, the people that I can turn to celebrate joys. That's something I find really hard to do as an adult without feeling prideful or boastful. And the people that I have grown to know here, they're my community, the people I can turn to celebrate the joys that happen in life. And that's why I keep coming back here to Fountain Street Church, because I know here I have a community where the spiteful, incomplete, imperfect work in progress that I am is always loved. I'm reminded of the people who give me hope, that there are things worth having faith in. And most importantly, especially in these long nights and unseasonably warm days of Midwest Michigan winter, where it's easy to get overwhelmed and scared and exhausted in life, I come here to get refilled and remember that it's important to celebrate the joys, even if they're small, little moments. So I want to say welcome to Fountain Street Church. Whether you grew up here and have lots of stories, or if this is your first time, no matter who you are, the color of your skin, whom you love, what you believe in or don't believe in, whether you're here masked in person or joining us over the internet, welcome to Fountain Street Church. You're loved here, and I hope you can find some small joys to celebrate this week. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Lydia Stubbs. I'm the Director of Children Youth Programs here at Fountain Street Church, and working with our youngest congregants is wonderful and a great honor. Today, the call to worship, I'm reading the For Joy by Jane Richardson. Please hear these words and let them draw your heart and soul into this hour of worship with one another. You can prepare, but still, it will come to you by surprise. Crossing through your doorway, calling your name in greeting, turning like a child who quickens suddenly. Within you, it will astonish you how wide your heart will open in welcome. For the joy that finds you so ready and still so unprepared.
Ada Blankhorn wrote this song, Keep on the Sunny Side, 1898. A.P. Carter of the Carter family stole it, copyrighted it as its own, and recorded it in 1928. Because of that act of piracy, we still know this song today. This song, she wrote it, and it was featured in the Baptist hymnal nationwide. So I imagine this song was sung here on the foundations of this church back at the turn of the century. Ada wrote in her memoirs about writing this song and said the inspiration was a young boy that lived next door to her who was handicapped and wheelchair bound. And every day his nurse would take him out and push him down the street, get him some air. And he'd always say every day, and Ada heard this, please, please, walk me on the sunny side. 1, 2, 3. There's a dark and a troubled side of life. There's a bright and a sunny side too. Though we meet with the darkness and strife, the sunny side we may also view. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It will help us every day, it will brighten all the way, if we keep on the sunny side of life. Though the storms in its fury breaks today, crushing hopes that we cherish so dear, storms and clouds in time will pass away, the sun again will shine bright and clear. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It will help us every day, it will brighten all the way, if we keep on the sunny side of life. Let us greet with a song of hope each day. though the moment be cloudy or fair. Let us trust in our Savior always, who keepeth everyone in his care. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It will help us every day, it will brighten all the way, if we keep on the sunny side of life.
Good morning. My name is Allie Benstead, and I will be reading this morning's contemporary witness. This morning's contemporary witness comes to us from Jan Richardson's poem, Gabriel's Annunciation. Hear what the contemporary spirit is saying to each of us this morning. For a moment, I hesitated on the threshold. For the space of a breath, I paused, unwilling to disturb her last ordinary moment, knowing that the next step would cleave her life, that this day would slice her story in two, dividing all the days before from all the ones to come. The artist would later depict the scene, Mary dazzled by the archangel, her head bowed in humble assent. Awed by the messenger who condescended to leave paradise, to bestow such an honor upon a woman and a mortal. Yet I tell you, it was I who was dazzled, I who found myself agape when I came upon her. Reading at the loom in the kitchen, I cannot now recall, only that the woman before me, blessed and full of grace, long before I called her so, shimmered, with how completely she inhabited herself, inhabited the space around her, inhabited the moment that hung between us. I wanted to save her from what I had been sent to say, yet when the time came, when I had stammered the invitation, history would not record the sweat on my brow, the pounding of my heart would not note that I said, "Do not be afraid," to myself as much as to her. It was she who saved me, her first deliverance, her let it be, not just declaration to the divine, but a word of solace, of soothing, of benediction for the angel in the doorway, who would hesitate one last time just for the space of a breath. Torn from his chest before wrenching himself away from her, radiant consent, her beautiful and awful yes.
Good morning and welcome. My name is Reverend Greta Joe, and I use she, her pronouns, and I am pleased to serve here as the assistant minister. And I'd like to tell you a story this morning. You see, at Christmas time, we hear a lot of stories. You might even have a special stack of Christmas books that comes out each December. And really, the story we hear the most, perhaps, is the story of a baby named Jesus. Now, if you come back on Thursday, Christmas Eve, at either 5 or 9:30 p.m., you will get to hear that story. But that's not the story I want to tell you this morning. Well, I guess maybe I want to tell you part of that story, or maybe it's a preamble or a prequel. It's the story of Mary, part of her story, Mary, the mother of Jesus. So, not so long ago, Mary learned that she was unexpectedly and inexplicably pregnant. We heard that part of the story from Gabriel's perspective just a minute ago. So, what do you do when you learn overwhelming, life-changing, heart-bursting news? I know what I do. You call your best friend, of course. And that's exactly what Mary did. Mary's good friend Elizabeth. She hurried from her home to the countryside in a place called Judea. See, they didn't have cell phones at the time that this story was taking place, let alone FaceTime, so she actually had to physically go to Elizabeth. And she hurried up to the house, and when she came to Zechariah and Elizabeth's house, she called out because this good news of great joy was just bursting out of her. Elizabeth! Elizabeth, I'm here and I have something to tell you. But before Elizabeth even saw Mary, Elizabeth knew. Elizabeth knew that something holy was about. Because there was also a baby in Elizabeth's belly. And at the sound of Mary's voice, that baby kicked and jumped and generally gave her that mother a little bit of a hard time. Anybody who's carried a child in their belly can tell you that sometimes those kicks are not so joyful. But at this joy from that unborn baby, Elizabeth was overcome with emotion, and she was called by the Spirit of the Holy to speak. She said, "Oh, Mary, you are blessed and you are a blessing, and so is the child that you carry. How blessed am I that you have come to call me friend and to visit me. Even the baby in my belly is jumping for joy. God has blessed you, and I am grateful." At this heartfelt welcome from her friend, Mary felt the presence of the Spirit upon her once again, and she too spoke. And her words were so beautiful, so filled with love and joy, so prophetic and magnificent that they are often referred to as a song. Specifically, they are called the Magnificat. She cried out, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God. God has blessed me. Surely others for generations will know that I am blessed, because God has done great things for me. Justice will follow and flow through the generations, because God has promised me that it will be so." So powerful was this friendship, so fierce the connection that they shared to the holy, and so true the need for community in these transformative and trying times, that Mary stayed with Elizabeth for 3 months before returning home. And it is with that spirit of joyful community that we light today's Advent candle, honoring the 4th week of Advent, joy.
Good morning. My name is Anna Benstead, and I will be reading the Ancient Witness this morning, which comes to us from the book of Luke, chapter 1, verses 39 through 56. Hear what the ancient spirit is saying to each of us this morning. In those days, Mary set out and went with haste to a Judean town in the hill country, where she entered the house of Zechariah and greeted Elizabeth. When Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, the child leaped in her womb, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit and exclaimed with a loud cry, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. And why has this happened to me, that the mother of my Lord comes to me? For as soon as I have heard the sound of your greeting, the child in my womb leaped for joy, and blessed is she who believed that there would be a fulfillment of what was spoken to her by the Lord." And Mary said, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior, for he has looked with favor on the lowliness of his servant. Surely from now on all generations will call me blessed, for the Mighty One has done great things for me, and holy is his name. His mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. He has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, according to the promise he made to our ancestors, to Abraham and to his descendants forever." And Mary remained with her about 3 months and then returned home.
Thank you, choir, for that gift. Friends, I don't know if you've noticed, but we have had the choir singing a beautiful Christmas hymn every week, and that was a decision that was made when we realized we still weren't fully out of the woods of COVID yet and couldn't sing together. And so I am, eternally grateful for your gift of ushering that spirit of congregational singing as best you could for the rest of us. Hey, good morning. I'm Reverend Christopher Rowe. In this season, I have the privilege and the honor of serving as the acting senior minister here in this Cathedral of Love, in this Temple of Peace. And I'm so happy to be with you this morning, though I'm feeling nervous today. And I said that to Reverend Greta Joe when I walked in. I said, I don't know why, but I feel anxious. And I finally figured it out as we sat here. I looked out at all of you and I thought, okay, Christopher, half of these people are going to think, what the heck is this kid going to tell us about joy we don't already know? And the other half are thinking, how dare he talk about joy in a time like this? It's a tough topic. I'm also carrying some sadness with me. I hate the end of things, including the season of Advent. I hate that it's already over. How are 4 candles already lit? I just want to savor this moment. I've been thinking a lot about these holy seasons. I cherish them. And I think Advent's my favorite, though Lent is a close second. And not unlike Lent or any of the spiritual seasons, I suppose. Advent's a journey, or even a spiritual pilgrimage, if you will. One that you and I and this beloved community has been on for 4 weeks. It's this beautiful season of waiting and listening, a time for observing and understanding, and a spiritual quest to see just how deeply we are willing to look into the mirrors that the prophets hold up and how much deeper we're willing to look through the windows before us into a different kind of world. But unlike Lent, Advent doesn't take us into the isolation of the wilderness. These holy days that we've shared don't catapult us into the loneliness of the desert, and this spiritual season doesn't call us into the insulation of the valley of shadows. Advent's the people season. It's the community season. Advent is the season of belonging. And if Lent is about daring to go into the secluded spaces that help us become more in touch with God and the spirit of the divine that is within us, then I would suggest that the journey of Advent is about going into those places and spaces that connects us to God and the divine spirit that is among us. If Lent takes us into the wilderness and the desert and the quiet places, then Advent takes us right into the city, the suburbs, and the people places. If Lent is a season of being, then Advent is the season of belonging. If Lent dares us to imagine a life in which the God Spirit within could be most fully alive and fully enfleshed within ourselves, then Advent dares us to imagine a world and embody a world and enflesh a world in which we see that same human dignity and divine right available to our neighbor. If Lent takes us into a silence that is so loud that it cultivates the ancient truths within, then Advent surrounds us with the noisiness of the prophets who dare us to look into the mirrors of truth. Prophets who call us to look through their windows into a world that could be, and the prophets who command us to stand at the ancient crossroads with them and officially declare what direction we dare to go, what kind of world we want to cultivate, and what kind of community we want to live into. Yeah. Advent takes us to the people places. And so far on this shared journey that we've been on to and through the people places, we've hung these beautiful banners, we've lit these magical candles, and we've prepared our hearts and pondered the power of faith, hope, and love, and fleshed among us and embodied by each and every one of us. Faith, hope, and love. Faith, hope, and love. Does that sound familiar? It might. And it should. Not just because they're among the most widely known words spoken by Paul, but also because we talked about them in October. And if you'll recall, we talked about how Paul was also venturing to and through the people places, ministering to a world that was facing a crisis of leadership and vision, direction, and division. And he was responding to a world that was once again entrenching itself in injustice, oppression, and marginalization. And so he penned that famous love poem, or ode to love, if you will, as a way of holding up a window to the way the world could be to the ancient community. Faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is. And if you dig into your collective memories a little further, back into that first Sunday in October, you might also remember that it was determined that compassion might be a better way to reframe Paul's kind of love. Compassion. Compassion because it's the active posture of love. Compassion as an action, as a living, breathing, and active posture that actually requires something of us. A form of being that simply moves from feeling something for others to actually taking on their perspective, understanding their suffering, and just surrendering a little bit of ourselves to their inner and outer world. Faith, hope, and compassion, which, of course, brings us to this morning, which brings us to the egregious and audacious theme of joy in a world that does not necessarily feel joyful or joy-filled, does it? Once again, here I am in front of you for the fourth week in a row, somewhat unexcitedly here to talk to you this time about joy, when I know that so many of you have publicly declared and privately to me that you're just not feeling that joyful this year, are you? And I too had to wrestle with this egregious idea of joy in the midst of our world right now. And in that wrestling, I was reminded of a quote from the late priest and theologian Henry Nouwen, who once wrote, "Joy is hidden in compassion. The word compassion literally means to suffer with. It seems quite unlikely that suffering with another person would bring joy. Yet being with a person in pain, offering our simple presence to someone in despair, sharing with a friend times of confusion and uncertainty, those experiences can bring deep joy. Not happiness, no, not excitement, not great satisfaction, but the quiet joy of being there for someone else and living in deep solidarity with our brothers and sisters in this human family we share. Often, this is a solidarity of weakness, of brokenness, and woundedness. But it leads to the center of joy, which is sharing our humanity with one another." Now, if Nouwen's suggestion is true, which I believe it is, the observant of joy on this fourth Sunday in Advent, almost as a postlude to faith, hope, and love, actually makes a good deal of sense. It makes sense then that as our Advent journey comes to a close together, we choose to end with joy. It makes sense then that as we venture to and through the people places, and as we ponder and imagine and embody and enflesh faith, hope, and love, we too would respond with joy. It makes sense then that a young girl in an ancient world riddled with injustice and oppression, exploitation and marginalization would embody faith, hope, and love so profoundly that at the Annunciation of her next ministry to the world, she too would respond with joy. It makes sense that in a moment in which any one of us might be afraid to say yes, Mary as prophet, and arguably one of the first preachers of the Bible, would release her revolutionary war cry in the form of unbridled and unwavering joy. It makes sense then that as she embodied faith and hope in a better world and allowed her radical love to say no to the way the world was, that she knew and understood the true center of joy because she truly experienced and shared her humanity with the rest of a broken and suffering world. It makes sense then that Mary's no to her world was a joyful yes to a new one. And so, too, does it make sense then this morning that in our own world that is absolutely jam-packed with loss and lament, suffering and sorrow and injustice and iniquity, there is still so much possibility for joy. Not that bubbling wellspring of happiness or the fountain of excitement or even oceans of deep satisfaction, but rather the kind of joy that can only be experienced when we know and understand the suffering of all of us in the people places and align ourselves with those who need and depend on our solidarity most. And when you look at it that way, if you can look at it that way, there certainly is so much possibility for joy in this world. There really is. Because Advent is indeed a spiritual journey, and it's one that we have shared. And as we pilgrimed through and to the people places this year, as we imagined the ancient call for faith, hope, and love over these past 4 weeks, and even as we held the tension of faithlessness and hopelessness and lovelessness in our world, we too have felt the call to be presented and respond with joy. We too have been invited to experience the joy in siding with the oppressed, being with those who are in pain, aligning ourselves with those at the margins, and declaring our solidarity with everyone and all who despair. And more importantly, we too have been invited this season, if not called, into the deepest parts of the people places, the messy parts, the awkward parts, the parts that confront us even with the more mirrors than we could imagine, the parts that afflict our paradigms, and the parts that force us to join Mary in saying no to the way the world is and yes to the way the world could be and the way that the arc of justice has always been bending. And only in that surrender, and only in that movement into and through the deepest of people places can we truly know joy. But that is, after all, the call of Advent. Faith, hope, love, and joy. 4 profoundly delicate and fragile and precious virtues waiting to be enfleshed among all of us. Each of them interdependent on one another and dependent on each of us if we're going to bravely stand with the prophets and daringly choose to embody a more loving and just and inclusive world. And perhaps more so than any other year, this Advent journey that we have been on has stirred us from our complacence and forced us to finally listen to the truth tellers among us, especially those who have been calling on us to build a better world than the one we inherited or the one we see today. And so if there's one final thing that I pray we all take from this particular season of Advent, I pray that we recognize that it is bigger than these 4 weeks or 4 candles. I pray that we recognize it's bigger than a countdown series to Christmas Eve or even a sermon series for 4 weeks. Because, friends, Advent is always happening. Advent is always happening. Advent is always happening within, among, and around us all. And in many ways, it's a never-ending journey. There will always be another prophet. There will always be another mirror, another window, another crossroads, another opportunity to say no, and another chance to say yes. And another Gabriel ready to visit us when we least expect it, even if it's in the darkness of the night, and invite us to be a more loving, just, and compassionate world. So I guess the only thing that still remains to be asked, the only mystery that still lies before us in the Christmas story is how we will choose to respond. For your sake, for my sake, and for our world's sake, I pray that it will be with joy. May it be so.
This is a 17th century Irish waltz that I discovered while researching old British Isles waltzes. We've been performing this for processionals at the many weddings we play for about the last 30 years. a waltz called A Lover of Mild Behavior.
I want to invite you into the spirit of prayer and meditation. So shift your body a little. You might have been stuck in one position for maybe a little long now. If you can, plant both feet firmly on the ground. Relax your shoulders and take a deep breath. In High Tide in Tucson, Barbara Kingsolver says, "In my own worst seasons, I've come back from the colorless world of despair by forcing myself to look hard for a long time at a single glorious thing. A flame of red geranium outside my bedroom window, and then another, my daughter in a yellow dress, and another, the perfect outline of a full dark sphere behind the crescent moon. Until I learned to be in love with life again. I have taught myself joy over and over again." I invite you to turn your focus toward one glorious thing. If you're joining us at home, perhaps that's the light through the window, the warmth of your coffee mug in your hands, the soft breath of an animal sitting next to you, or the pattern on a piece of cloth. If you're here, perhaps you turn your gaze towards the stained glass windows, or focus on the flicker of a candle flame. Perhaps you prefer to use your ears and open your heart to sound. Perhaps it's the intricate pattern on a neighbor's piece of clothing. Pick one. Let everything else fall away. Let your eyes soften on it. Let your ears relax. Remember to breathe. Can you find its edges? Where does it end? Can you find its center? Where does it begin? What holds it up? What does it point to? Find the smallest piece that makes it what it is. Find its wholeness. Breathe in. Breathe out. Let that one glorious thing turn into a smile that stretches from the corners of your mouth to the corners of your eyes, as you take in the mere possibility of its existence. Let it teach you joy. Spirit of life, ground of being, hold us today. In times when we stumble, may your loving ways rise to meet us. And in our celebrations, may you fill us with gratitude. As we wade through the ebb and flow of living this life, may we feel your presence, knowing that all things, all times come in seasons, in waves. Give us the strength and the grace to ride whatever life has brought our way today.
God of our being and our becoming, source of hope, thing of joy. Be with those of us for whom life has brought the excitement of possibility. May it fill our souls, nourish our beings, and spill out of us in shared nutrients. We also ask for your presence with those who are feeling the unpredictability, who feel pulled out, untethered. Give us courage and a strong memory to remember that there is always joy, even if just in a single glorious thing, that we are here and we are alive. So it is with joy, gratitude, and a deep desire for connection that we gather here. We hold both joys and sorrows. I invite you to feel one more glorious thing, to place your hand on your heart. Find your heartbeat. Know that it is yours, that what you carry is yours, unique and whole in who you are. And know that every other person beside and beyond you beats in the unique, joyful wholeness that they are. Send love, send faith, send hope, and find joy to you and beyond in this and all days. Blessed be.
Come sailing in on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. I saw 3 ships come sailing in on Christmas Day in the morning. And what was in those ships so free on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day? And what was in those ships so free on Christmas Day in the morning? Our Savior Christ and His Lady on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. Our Savior Christ and His Lady on Christmas Day in the morning. Pray with us and the ships so free on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. Pray with us and the ships so free.
Thank you, choir, for that beautiful piece. And the handbells, thank you. This congregation has a lovely tradition during the Advent season of gifting our offering plate to a local organization doing good work to bring about change in our world. In keeping with our COVID precautions, we are not physically passing the plate today, but our ushers will be at the back and the narthex as you exit with offering plates. And I want to take a minute to tell you today about who will be receiving today's offering. I couldn't not quote Bell Hooks today, an ancestor now who left us a wonderful legacy of learning. Bell Hooks says, "One of the most vital ways we sustain ourselves is by building communities of resistance, places where we know we are not alone." In a world that seems hopeless, that feels stripped of joy, we have a choice, the choice that Reverend Christopher presented us with, to have faith that something else is possible, and then to build places where that has a chance to grow. And that's what community organizing does. It organizes power through people, and yes, it organizes power through money to build a world where justice and joy for all is possible. And if that wasn't reason enough, I can personally attest that there are few places that I have seen filled with more true joy, that compassion-filled joy, than a room filled with organizers. Pastors, teachers, parents, teens, folks from all walks of life bringing their hearts, minds, and souls into a common goal, building the beloved community here and now. I have been honored to be part of such rooms in previous chapters of my life and ministry, and I am now blessed to be part of a growing room of sustainers, resistors, believers, organizers, community makers, here in Grand Rapids, alongside several and hopefully growing number of Fountain Streeters. And that's as part of the West Michigan Community Organizing Group, the recipient of our offering today. Using broad-based organizing to transform and bring a more beloved world here to Grand Rapids. If you'd like to learn more about West Michigan Community Organizing, I invite you to reach out to our lay leaders, who are Jean Bailey and Linda Jones, or you're also welcome to reach out to me. So if you believe, or if you just want to believe, in just and joyful communities, I encourage you to give wholeheartedly and generously, not just of your time and your talents, but also of this. If you don't carry cash, the ushers will still love you and they'll still let you pass. You can give also online on our website. Thank you for supporting West Michigan Community Organizing today.
Friends, we have, let's see if we can do that. There we go. Friends, we have just a couple announcements before we go. The first of which is you are warmly invited to celebrate Christmas Eve with us this Friday, I believe it is. Friday at 5 o'clock, we'll have a service for all ages. We're hoping to make that inclusive of all types of postures of being, we'll say. So the young at heart or the actual young. We'll have a story that is woven throughout a service of candle lighting of the Advent wreath, as well as some special music. So that should be very special. And then at 9:30, please join us for the beloved traditional service. We'll have the choir. We'll have an ensemble led by Ed Clifford. We'll have special music, beautiful readings, and a liturgy. We will not light the candles as we have in the past, but we have other beautiful things that will be decorating our space and holding that light for us. So please join us at 5 or 9, and you can also still do that from home if that's your comfortable place or the most easy to pull off logistical place. I know that's where my family will watch it from far away. So please join us for one of those services. I also just want to lift up a massive thank you to everyone during this Advent season who made it so beautiful and meaningful, from the choir to the guest musicians to the guest speakers that we had, to all of the plethora of readers and everyone who made these possible. From the bottom of my heart and our hearts, we are so grateful that this was such a meaningful Advent season. So thank you. You please help me show them their appreciation. And thank you, Hawks and Owls, for being here today. Thank you to the choir and Jonathan and all of our readers and Reverend Greta Joe. I have one more announcement that I'm hoping Wynn will still make.
Very short. I'm Wynn Irwin. I'm a longtime Fountain Streeter, and I'm also your current treasurer. And I want to share you the progress that we've made so far with the stewardship campaign. Over 200 people have already pledged for 2022, and that's over $509,000 toward our $650,000 goal. So a huge, huge thank you to all of those who've already done that. For those of you who have delayed your pledge, and I know there's some of you out there, please do it as soon as you can. Please help us make the next year one that we can enter with confidence so that all of our exciting plans for next year can be realized. Pledge cards, of course, are out in the narthex for you, but have a joyful and wonderful holiday season. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wynn. Thank you. Friends, as we depart from this final service of Advent, just before the true Christmas season begins this weekend, I want to share with you your blessing and your departure. It was a writing exercise of mine. Maybe it was a way of processing my grief work that Advent was over. Maybe it was my way of trying to thread a needle through the 4 themes of Advent. But either way, please receive this modern Beatitudes project I'm calling the Sermon on the Way Out. Blessed are those who wait and pay attention and listen, for they will be ready for Gabriel's invitation. Blessed are those who free their minds and open their souls for the sake of the world, for they will be ready to look into the prophet's mirror and through the prophet's window. Blessed are those who wrestle with faith, for they are joining the ancestors in a similar sequence of being. Blessed are those who feel entwined with hopelessness, for they truly understand the magnitude of hope. Blessed are those who embody love as an active way of being, and in flesh love as compassion with the other, for they are truly able to venture into the fullness of the people places where too few others dare to go. Blessed are those who know faith. Blessed are those who embody hope and in flesh love so deeply that when asked to take the next step into a more just and loving world, they say yes with the unbridled, unharnessed, and unimaginable joy of Mary. For they show us the power of the Advent that is always turning within, among, and around all of us. Blessed are those who need us most. Blessed are those we need most. Blessed is the gift of community, especially this one. Blessed are those in need of comfort and those we can comfort. Blessed is the messiness and the mystery. Blessed is the truth-telling mirrors and the prophetic window, the coming of peace waiting to be born, and the peacemakers among us who are ready to give birth to something new. Rejoice, be glad, take heart, and take hope, for the reward of all of these things is a world of beloved community, rooted and enfleshed in love, justice, and peace, so unimaginable, yet so possible, if we choose to respond with joy. So, may it be so. May it be so. May it be so. Merry Christmas, my friends.